Okay, we good, Dave?
Sounds good to me.
All right, welcome back for this incredibly late Christmas edition of Gaming Wisconsinbly podcast. Yeah, I mean it's
Christmas outside right now.
It's damn near April, but it's Wisconsin. Yeah, we just got 8 inches last night.
Yeah,
it's looks just as Christmas as anything else. I still have my lights on outside. I can flip the switch at any moment.
Yeah,
but so we were supposed to do this a while ago, and for reasons partially laziness on my part. Mostly laziness on my part, but we got there. We're going to go over some of our Christmas video game gifts from our childhood. Some are better, some not so much. Mostly Dave's case, but
yeah, some we wouldn't have picked, but that's what you got. That's what you had to play on Christmas morning. You had to not be the brat and get nothing next time.
For some reason, so my parents, they would never buy me video games ever. I was the rent-a-kid. She would hand me, my mom, she'd give me $5. I go down to Hollywood Video on a weekend, rent a game, stay out of her hair. That was just kind of the way we did it.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when the Nintendo 64 came out, they bought one a few months really after it came out. It was still brand new basically, but that following Christmas, they actually bought me a bunch of stuff. And every Christmas after that, they at least got me one game that I wanted.
Nice.
So they never did the random game thing, which I think was more your case.
Yeah.
They just went on the shelves and saw something.
Yeah, I got my Nintendo. I believe that was a Christmas present. The action set.
I mean, that's a pretty badass present.
That was good, and that was I very early on got Mario 1 and Zelda, and that was great. And so I ended up with about a dozen games, but I had a couple of Christmas presents that were Nintendo games. And the problem was trying to explain to your mom, I want a role-playing game. I want Dragon Quest.
She don't know what
that is. So okay, I want sword and sorcery. I want something with the knights and dragons. And then we can get into that. But it doesn't always work out how you expect. Let's say.
So I got a little story on that. I told my dad once because he was going to Woodman's back in the day, which is a local grocery store brand around Wisconsin. And they used to have a video rental store basically in their grocery store.
Pretty nice.
And you'd go to Woodman's because, whatever, you got to buy food. And he'd sometimes just ask me hey, do you want me to rent a game? Basically I'm doing shit this weekend, leave me alone, kid type of deal.
Right.
So I told him I was super into Ninja Turtles. I'm can you give me Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game? The beat 'em up for NES. I'd probably rented it 3 times already, but as a kid, you don't know any better. It's just whatever, you have fun with it. Huh. So he's yeah, sure, whatever. He even wrote it down on a piece of paper. Figured, great, I'm going to have Ninja Turtles in a couple hours.
Nice.
So he returns, and guess what game he got me?
Battletoads?
Not that far off. So he got me Ninja Gaiden 2.
Ah.
But I was 6.
Yeah.
I booted up. I think I got past the first level and just rage quit. Because I'm dude, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I could do some things. I could get past the dam in Ninja Turtles 1, but for some reason you throw in a quick platformer like Ninja Gaiden at me? Nah.
Yeah, that's rough.
So that's my little story, but
yeah,
run the 64 times. So I asked my parents for a game. I can't remember if this is the same year, following years, or whatever, but one of the games I asked for was Destruction Derby. Because I played the 64 version, I think it was a relatively new game when I bought it, or when my parents got it for me. But I had played the PS1 version of the game over at a buddy's house, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was you're a kid, and it's dude, cars go crash, boom, whatever. You have fun with it. It was a fun game.
Yeah.
So she got me the Nintendo 64 version, which I'd never even seen, didn't even know it was a thing. But I gotta say, I ended up loving that game. It ends up being one of my top. Oh boy, I haven't played through all of the Nintendo 64 library, but for me that would be the top 20 of games. I mean, it's a small set. I mean, there's a lot of filler crap in there.
Yeah.
But for the good stuff, I would consider it the top 20 for me, because it's a game that I can plug in at any point, and even just have 10 minutes of dumb fun, you can do it with Destruction Derby. And this is a game, who made this one?
Developed by Looking Glass Studios and published by THQ.
Yeah, so THQ, known for a ton of Nintendo 64 titles, mainly sports, racing, wrestling games. But, hey, they published Destruction Derby. It is at its core, it is a racing game. But instead of just getting a time like you would Mario Kart, it's not about winning a race. It's about scoring points. And that's where the destruction aspect comes into it.
Right.
So while you're racing around a track, which it can be, a standard track, there's like 10 of them in the game. It's actually quite robust.
For that time, yeah.
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 So while you're going around the track, you and a set of cars is going one way, and another set of 10 cars is going the other way. And you meet up several times, like kind of in the middle of each part
side,
of the lap.
Yeah.
And what you do is you just try to have the most, atrocious head-on collisions as possible. There's not a ton of, it's the 64, so you're not going to get a ton of great car exploding effects or anything.
Right.
But what you do is you see these big points being scored for these great head-on collisions. And so you're just trying to score points.
Right.
And what can kind of suck is early in the game, you can actually get out of a race pretty quick. Your car can get destroyed, and as soon as you're destroyed, you're done scoring points. The race is over for you. Now, the computer will kind of go on in the background. It's not like you have to sit there and wait 6 minutes for it to finish.
Right.
But it'll tally up your points. It'll tally up everyone's points. That's what you get. You either score enough to advance or you don't, and you have to start the race over again. It's a very easy game, so you never score enough points unless you decide to just YOLO and blow up your car in the first lap somehow, which is very difficult to do. But kind of a hidden aspect of the game that makes it more fun is the time trial mode. So it's actually got a fairly decent time trial mode where it's very hard. So you can't take any of the stock cars in the game and complete any of the time trial laps. You literally can't beat it. So what you have to do is unlock one of the faster cars before really doing the time trials. Now, there's a ton of cars to unlock. There's probably 10 plus, ranging from things like a police car, a hot rod, an ambulance, a taxi cab, and some other fancy looking cars that are either good or bad. But pickup truck, which is one of the best ones,
of course.
But yeah, so my kind of secret hint for anyone that's thinking about playing that game, and again, it's very easy to just dive into. It's a very shallow learning curve. And it's a cheap game, so there's really no excuse for you. But if you get in there, do the first set of the Grand Prix stuff to unlock what is I don't even remember what the car is called. It's like a lowrider or something like that. But you unlock this car, and it's the third fastest car in the game. It's got shitty durability, so you're not going to win a lot of destruction derbies with it. But what you do is you unlock that car, and you immediately just start doing the time trials. And you complete every single time trial that there is. And you're just going to unlock all the best cars in the game that you can then take to the Grand Prix mode and just score 800 points on the first lap. Which, without some of the better cars, you only score 200. So
it just doesn't have the durability for that.
Exactly. So this one has not only the speed, so you can hit as many checkpoints as you feel like, but it also has the durability. And the higher durability you get to, I think the more points you score. There's something kind of going on there.
Well, it doesn't seem to be a way to hit the other car at a certain angle necessarily where you take less damage than them. It's just more you want to get the biggest crash you can and still be drivable.
Right. And then once your car, there's a little meter on the side that tells you what your durability is.
Right.
Once you're kind of below a certain amount, you kind of want to avoid other cars on the road and just try to get your points for the checkpoints. Because you get 20 for each checkpoint, and you get additional time if there's still cars on the road.
But you don't want to just avoid cars first to get all your checkpoints, because then there may not be enough.
Well, right, they might all be gone by the time you're on the 5th checkpoint. Then you can't score anything.
You can't get any points. So,
yeah. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what Destruction Derby is. It is a very fun multiplayer game. The only problem with that is it's kind of the same problem with any Nintendo 64 racing multiplayer game. It starts to slow down pretty bad, and it's a little squish screen. So, you got to play it on a pretty big TV if you want to do that.
Yeah, I don't think they had a way with the N64, with the PlayStation, where you could hook up multiple units on different TVs, did they? I don't think so.
I doubt it. I've never seen it if there is. So.
I never did it back in the day either, but I was vaguely aware that there was a possible way to do that for some systems back in the day, and I never had the wherewithal to pull that off. But.
It's like when you try to play 4-player GoldenEye or Perfect Dark, and it's oh boy.
Yeah.
GoldenEye not so bad. Perfect Dark has some major slowdown, even with the expansion pack. It's it's kind of a struggle sometimes to do that.
It's not like you had huge TVs typically back then to try and have the quarter of this tiny screen and still see what's going on.
You're usually playing on like a 27 inches or max.
Yeah.
I think.
Tube TV.
I don't even think I had a 27. I probably had like a 24 or something.
Yeah.
Or like if you had I had an aunt and uncle that had one of those giant projection TVs, the big 48 inches or whatever, but they would never let me hook anything.
Of course. Yeah.
I don't know why, but that's the way it was. I mean, I couldn't imagine trying to get behind one of those things, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as Destruction Derby, that's always one of those, like, in my back pocket if I have some time to kill. It is an easy game to throw in and play. There's some, like, as a racing game itself, it's not very in-depth. It doesn't have, like, all the secrets and stuff that, like, a Mario Kart or Diddy Kong Racing would have. But it's got just enough there to keep you busy for a few hours. Especially, like, the Grand Prix, like, adds on, for each difficulty mode, it adds on more races. So it's kind of like fake content, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's enough to keep you engaged, and it's never boring. So,
cool.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah, it was. We sat down and played it for a bit, and it was very playable, even for someone like me. I sometimes struggle to sit down to an N64 game and get good at it right away.
Yeah, we'll get there later with Snowboard Kids.
Yeah, but this one was okay. This one was fine.
Yeah, this is very easy pick up and play. Like I said, it's cheap. This is seriously one of my like 4-star games out of 5. It's just like whatever. I mean, it's not deep, but if you look at racing games in 64, most of them are pretty shallow. Honestly, like the only ones that are very deep is like Diddy Kong Racing, which has just tons and tons of content, and like not even Mario Kart. Mario Kart just has a lot of tracks,
right?
But it's got like some speed modes and a mirror mode, and well, okay, never mind. The more I talk about it, the more Mario Kart is in depth. But
I mean, you didn't necessarily need that much in that era to be a good game.
No,
a good racing game.
No, some games you play and it's like. Well, there's like 30 minutes of solid content once you're good at it, and that's about it.
I mean, you're not too far away from like things like Daytona on the
San Francisco Rush, whatever. I mean,
if you had 3 or 4 tracks, you were lucky.
Yeah.
Some of those older games. So,
okie doke, Dave. Give me one.
So, well, I would say again for that game, I would concur with you that it's a 4 out of 5 for Destruction Derby. So we'll throw that out there. The next one, the one I wanted to go on to now is Rampart. So going off of my story earlier, I said, Mom, get me a game with, knights and dragons and swords and sorcery and all that. And sure enough, on the cover of Rampart is a knight with a sword and so forth. And
she's not wrong.
She's not wrong.
Yeah.
I wasn't what I was expecting. I think it's probably the game with a sword guy or whatever on the cover that's the least of what I was expecting.
This almost sounds like a challenge now.
Yeah, I mean there might be something a little wilder, but yeah, it was interesting because this is not a RPG game or a strategy game or anything of the sort. It's a strategy puzzle game. It's just more of a straight puzzle game, really. It was developed by Atari and published by Jaleco. I believe this was this wasn't a Tengen release. I don't think there was a Tengen.
No, not that I know.
This was a legit published, by another company game that was a port of an Atari arcade game, which in the arcade had a trackball and it's kind of an interesting game.
See, I don't know which I prefer for controls more.
Yeah.
Because like the trackball, I don't know. Like maybe it's just that nowadays all the trackballs you see are just like worn out and shitty.
Yeah, I don't feel that this game suffered because of the lack of a trackball. This isn't like Arkanoid or something.
Right, Arkanoid needs it.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
I consider this a pretty simple but effective port of the arcade game. The graphics are obviously not the arcade graphics, but they're pretty decent.
I mean, they're not that different.
The sound and music, what there is okay. It's decent for the era. By no means is it exciting. It grates on you a little in places at times.
Does it even have music? I can't even remember.
I think I'm mostly saying like during the selection screen, there's kind of a
little something going on there.
Yeah, kind of a fanfare. Sorry, not really what you'd call much music. Yeah. Again, you're using a controller instead of the trackball, but that's fine. But the basic gameplay is you have a building stage and then you have a shooting stage. You start off with a building stage where you just select one of the available castles. It automatically builds a little wall around it. You place 3 cannons, and then you move on to the shooting stage where you have your castles are on a coastline, and you have ships sailing by and bombarding your walls with cannons. And there's a variety of ships. You have the standard 1-mast ship with a standard cannon. You have 2-master ships, which don't have they take more hits. They don't really hit you particularly hard with their cannons, but they can move up to the shore and drop off grunts. Troops.
Oh, yep.
And then you have the red ships, which don't drop troops, but they have a super cannon or a fireball cannon or whatever you want to call it.
That thing is annoying as hell.
Yeah, which not only does it hit your walls and destroy your walls, but it leaves rubble. And you can't build around rubble.
Yeah.
And if rubble is in the right place, it can make certain castles unsurroundable, because that's the whole point of the game. Is you have a shooting stage, you shoot as many of the ships as you can, and then it's a ceasefire, and then you go back to a building stage, and you need to surround at least one of the castles with walls.
Yeah, and if you don't get a complete surround, the castle is nothing.
Yeah, and so when you get a complete surround, it like blacks it out, and you can tell, and you can surround as many castles as you have time for, and you don't have very much time.
You have like 10 seconds or something.
20 something, yeah.
Something really small.
Something really small, but the more castles you surround, the more cannons you get. If you surround just the one, you get 1 extra cannon. If you surround 2, you get 2. If you surround 3, you get 3, etc. And you have to put those cannons within the surrounded area, within the walls. And then when you have your next shooting stage, you can only fire the cannons that you have surrounded. Yep. So if you screw up and don't surround the place where your existing cannons are, you don't get to use those cannons. And so basically you're trying to patch the holes in the wall. You're trying to prevent the grunts from getting up to your castles, because if they can get up to your castles, they can destroy them.
Now you can shoot the grunts, right?
You can shoot the grunts. You can also surround the grunts. If you enclose a group of grunts, it auto kills them, which is neat.
Okay.
But usually you don't have a lot of opportunities to do that. Usually.
No.
Usually if the grunts are getting near a castle or something, they're going to quickly, during the build stage, they're going to destroy it.
Yeah.
But the problem, again, is you have the rubble. If you have those red ships and they leave rubble, sometimes you cannot enclose a castle. There's too much rubble. And so you have to do things like creating decoy walls for them to shoot at, or deliberately not covering certain castles, because you may find, this castle is just a loss. I can't cover it. I better go and start building around this castle instead. I can't use those cannons anymore. Sorry, I just have to go pick this over here. And
it kind of feels defeatist when you do
does.
that.
It does. I mean, the rubble does over time. You have so many phases. Eventually, the rubble does fade away, but you have to live long enough for that to happen. And so it's an interesting game. You start out on this little island, and you can pick the easy mode or the hard mode. The hard mode gives you some extra points, but you only have 2 continues, I believe. I think you have 3 continues otherwise, or it's 2 in 1. Are
there different stages in each modes, or does one last longer than the other?
The practice mode is a really easy first stage, and then if you select hard mode, not only does it take away 1 continue, but it moves on to stage 2, basically, which is standard difficulty.
I was playing in hard mode. That's all right.
Yeah, and then from there you have a few more levels that you can select. And then it goes on to, I think, 2 or 3 stages where it just randomly picks for you. And those last few that it randomly picks are the hardest. And from there, the only difference is, how much of the map is taken up by water. There's one where there's like water on either side, and most of them are just a single coastline. And then just how many castles and how bad the ships are. And there's an interesting thing where I think at least the first time you continue, you come back, it says with more firepower. And I think it changes the look of your cannons. I think they're actually stronger.
Yeah, they fire quicker or something.
I think.
Yeah, I remember.
I think it just stays that way. I didn't play it enough to confirm, but the basic idea is to try and get as far as you can before you get annihilated by those fireball cannons, and then continue, and then it gets a little easier again. You get back to like the standard ships for a level or 2, and then it immediately ramps back up, and you just try to get as far as you can with those few continues that you have.
Some of those ships are super fast too, so especially if you don't have a ton of cannons, it's very hard to hit them.
Yeah, you have to get good at leading them, but then they also sometimes get jerky and change direction. So you're leading them and then they jerk off in a different direction, and that was an interesting way to say it, but they just peel off, and leave all your because you hit the button and the shot goes out in an arc and takes a while to land, and so you can't immediately fire again. You have to wait.
Right.
So,
the closer the ships are, the easier it is to hit them. But like generally, the hard ships are like way out in the back, just pot shotting the hell out of you.
Yeah. So not only do you have to wait for your cannon to be ready to fire again, but it takes a while to travel. So it's a challenge. It's not easy,
and it's also hectic.
It is.
That was the big part for me. Is like, oh my god, when the game starts, like you are just frantically doing so. It's like if you're playing the level 9 of Tetris.
Yeah.
You don't really have time to think too much about what you're doing. It's just kind of instinctual.
Yeah, you kind of go for the ships that are currently not moving. Sometimes they'll stop for a while, and that's
or the ones that are really close,
or the ones that are really
work your way out.
Yeah, and you have to kind of go back and forth. Sometimes you have to alternate between shooting at ships and shooting at the grunts, because again, you're trying to...
yeah. If the grunts are there, like, you can't do shit.
Yeah, if the grunts are there, if they get too close to a castle, they can destroy the castle. You can't build over them, so you might have to shoot them so that there's enough room to either build around them or to enclose them. And it's messy and stressful, and
it is very stressful. That game is like it has you screaming at points.
The big thing with that game to me, though, is that there's just not that much variety. You're pretty much just doing the same thing over and over again to see if you can get... There is an actual ending. You have to get through like 6 or 7 stages or whatever.
I think I've been through like 5.
Yeah. I can usually get to about the same point, and then I just get annihilated by the fireball cannons. I think you really have to abuse the system with like building decoy walls and, just building the bare minimum around your castle as possible so that they don't fill it full of rubble.
Yeah. And I don't think we mentioned, so like during the build rounds, basically the walls that you get are just randomly selected. It's like if you get like Tetris blocks.
Yes.
Yeah, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
They give you the most random things that you have to try to fit into like random areas that are sometimes filled up with all the rubble and stuff that we've already said, but like
Yep.
it is harder than it sounds.
Yeah, you have to sometimes get a piece that fits nowhere and find a place to put it. There may not be enough space left on the ground.
You might just have to throw it out into like the wasteland somewhere.
Yeah, and just to get rid of it so you can get a small piece that will actually fit. Sometimes you can lose purely because you didn't get that 1 block or 2 block or 3 block that will actually
That's
fit
the most
there.
frustrating piece. It's like when you accidentally, and you're frantically just smashing buttons at this point.
Yeah.
But like when you have just one little chunk of wall missing and it won't close on it, it's so frustrating.
You can rotate the pieces and place them. You cannot switch them. You cannot not place the piece. If you don't have a room to place it, you're done.
So it's like looking for an L block in Tetris and just not getting it sometimes. Or like a line piece, whatever,
Yep.
Yeah, so like Rampart, I don't know, like, so I never played it outside of like a 1v1 mode. I think we played it at the arcades that we visit sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I know I played that with my buddy Kyle a few times. It's like, it's fun. It's like a fun 5 minutes of dumb action.
Yes.
It's mostly hard, but whatever.
It's kind of like Rampart. It's something you can play for...
You mean Rampage?
Rampage. It's kind of like Rampage. Sound very similar. Where you can play it for a bit, it's fun for a bit, and then... Okay, what now?
Well, Rampage goes on until not until infinity, but like 100-something levels.
It's like that, but with 7 levels or whatever. So it's even
7
less,
very, very difficult levels,
and the very same levels. Yeah, so it's even less interesting, I will say, than Rampage.
Yeah, I would say there's a solid 30 minutes of content in this game, and there's not much else.
I will say, I think it improves a lot with the multiplayer, because the multiplayer...
Does it really, though?
I mean, I think, playing against another player is more balanced, it's more interesting.
I mean, it's fun, but those matches can end in, 5 seconds.
Yeah. I think it's maybe a point different. If it didn't have a multiplayer game, I would call it a 3-star game, I think. Yeah. With the multiplayer, 3.5. I mean, it's technically competent. It's just not super fun.
I give it a 3 because it's like for the time that you are playing it and the time that you are invested in it, it's actually very fun.
Yeah.
The only problem is that's 20 minutes of your time. It's kind of like, it feels like an original Game Boy game. It obviously looks and plays better.
Yeah.
But it's that type of thing for me. It's like, okay, well, once you kind of get to a certain point,
And that's the problem. I got this for Christmas, as I said.
I know.
And it was fun on Christmas. And then I'm like, okay, what now?
And you never want to say anything negative because nothing. You're getting nothing afterwards.
I don't want to complain about be a brat because then you're not getting a video game for Christmas next time because you complained about the last one.
You're getting socks, dude.
Yeah, exactly. That's not going to happen. So what's even more frustrating is I found out later that there's a different Rampart NES game, a Famicom game actually, because it only came out in Japan, produced by Konami.
Yeah, like all the Famicom sequels are just like infinitely better.
Well, and this wasn't even a sequel. This is just an alternate Rampart game.
Really, it's not called like Rampart 2 Electric Boogaloo.
It's just called Rampart.
Oh my god.
And like I said, it only came out in Japan. It had a lot more to it. It had actually 4 separate campaigns, and they're interesting. Like the first one is an army theme. The second one is Little Red Riding Hood fighting little mice and wolves. The second one is third one's Knights and Dragons, and the fourth one is feudal Japan.
This sounds awesome.
Neat. Yeah, it's awesome. And each
where's this game?
Each campaign has like 7 stages in it. You know, again, it's like 4 of the NES Rampart stuck together with different graphics on each one and better sound effects and everything, and different gameplay. Like you have more time to build. It's still stressful, but not as. But the mechanics seem better. Like there's levels that are all about grunts, where like you're trying to keep shooting the grunts to keep them under control and surround them and stuff. And there's it's no ships. It's all like tanks or dragons or knights or other things that shoot at you and have different effects. And some of them they run through your walls and wreck your walls and stuff. And cool. You can surround them and kill them. It's really neat. I would have been satisfied, I think, with that version of Rampart.
So was it made in the same year? Do you know?
It was made, so the NES version was released in 92, January 92.
That's pretty late. That's super late for such a game with like minimal depth.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, it's I think it was one of those that Atari just threw out there to have something, basically. Whereas the other one, Atari, the Konami game came out a year earlier, or the end of the year in 91.
Real wow. Okay.
And so I don't know if it was a fight, you know, Nintendo had their problems with Atari, right? You know, the Tengen thing and everything. I think this was after most of that was dealt with, and so this was published by Jalico. As I said, you know, Atari, I don't think Atari could publish necessarily for Nintendo anymore after all the argument they had, but other companies could take, you know, there was a lot of Atari arcade games, and so other companies could get the license and publish those. So I think this was just a quick cash grab of a popular license.
This feels like something that was made like for rental.
Yes.
Because there's not enough there to justify like a $50 brand new cost, or even more. I don't. Who knows?
Yeah.
How much this costs brand new? But like,
yeah,
there's not enough there, and it is a fairly uncommon game. Like, this is one of like the later games that I know I collected because you just don't come across it very often.
Yeah, this was something I got for Christmas. I don't know if it was in. I don't think it was in. Let's see. This came out in January 92. So I probably got it in December 92 or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't check back on Nintendo Power to see if it even got like a feature anywhere, if it was just kind of shoved in the back of like a new release section.
Yeah, I probably got this because this was the cheapest game with knights and things on it that my mom could find at the time. And I don't begrudge her that, because she knew nothing about this stuff, and I wasn't organized enough to like give her a list of names or anything like that. That wasn't even easy to do back then, mind you.
I think I know the answer to this, but let's say she came across Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah.
Well, what would you have chose?
Oh, I would have picked Ghosts and Goblins.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Like I said, I struggle to think of a game with any kind of sword dude on the front that I would have picked last. Maybe Times of Lore. Other than that, I struggle.
No, that doesn't have a sword guy.
I'm trying to remember what that had on the front, but yes. I think anything else with a sword guy on the front would be better.
Hold on, I gotta cross reference this before.
I think Times of Lore had a really generic.
Yeah, I think it just had like trees or some stuff on it.
It wasn't super interesting.
We're looking this up. No, it did have a sword guy. You're right.
I thought
a little sword guy.
Yeah. So, or an axe guy, whatever. Something, yeah.
Knight, whatever.
Honestly, I might have preferred Times of Lore. At least as bad as it was, I could have kept beating my head against it to try to figure it out.
At some point we're going to have to do Times of Lore on here?
We probably will. And I'm going to hate it. But
just because you keep talking shit about it?
Yeah, I do. But anyway, that's Rampart. Yeah, I'd say the most generous I could be for is a 3.5, because it is technically sound, but it's just so limited. Without multiplayer, it's 3-star easy.
Yeah, it's a fun 10-minute to 20-minute game. If you have like some time to kill, I equate this to back in the day where I'd throw Tetris in my Game Boy because I knew I didn't have enough time to play like a Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like I had 10 minutes to kill before we had to go like shopping or something, like Tetris.
Yeah.
I could easily see Rampart. I mean, it's fine. It's quick. It's easy.
Yeah.
Well, it's not easy, but it's fun.
Yeah. Again, this is not a game I have any desire really to play again. If you're going to play a Rampart game, play the Japanese version. Much better.
Yeah, and as far as like other 2-player competitive games, I mean, there's like the Tengen Tetris, which I would play over this any day for multiplayer.
Yep.
North and South, which it's kind of like an acquired taste, but once you like it type of deal.
Yeah. Yeah, there are other 2-player puzzle games even that are better than this. You know, Dr. Mario, Tetris.
Yeah, for sure.
Things like that.
Yeah, so I don't know, Rampart, it's fine.
It's disappointing.
Worth skipping, but not the worst thing to have.
Yeah.
So I'll go over my second. So we each chose 2. I had more. I could easily throw on like an honorable mention after this, because I do have one that was like, you gave me 2, and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna stick to 2.
Sure.
And just go with that. But for my second one, I chose Snowboard Kids 2, which a lot of people might be going like, what? You got a brand new copy of this? Like, yes, I bought it for $50, or my parents did when it came out. But like, this was a game that was on my radar because I'd seen it listed in a magazine. Now, it's not like a big game. A lot of people aren't like super familiar with it. But I saw an advertisement in a magazine that it was coming out, and I was a huge fan of Snowboard Kids 1.
Yeah.
So I know, like, Dave, I think we covered this years ago.
We did. That was one of the retro replay, or what was the name?
Roundtable things.
Retro
But like the audio is so jank on those, it's kind of like hard to go back and listen to. But hey, if you're really bored and you're on the channel and want to go take a look at it, it's buried in a playlist somewhere, but you can find it. It's there.
You can listen to me talk about how frustrated I am with the game.
Yeah, the content's not horrible. It's just like, if you can deal with the audio, and the video is horrible too. That's why we don't even bother with the video anymore, because like it fucking sucked. Let's just be real. But yeah, the audio is good. The info is good. It's all out there if you want to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
But as far as Snowboard Kids 2 goes, it's basically just
more of the same.
I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. Like, normally with the sequel, it either gets kind of worse, or it's the exact same thing, or it's like massively improved. And this is like kind of in the middle. So there's some things they took out of Snowboard Kids 1 that I really don't like the direction that they did. Then there's a lot of things they added in that makes it like a better game overall.
Sure.
So if you're not familiar with Snowboard Kids, essentially it's like Mario Kart with snowboards. It's almost the exact same game, but you get the snowboard physics. Where you, like, let's say I get hit with a slapper, which is one of the Mario Kart, like, it's like the turtle shell.
Right.
If I get hit with that, instead of just like pressing the A button to get your acceleration back, you have to kind of hop on your snowboard a little bit to get that momentum to go back down the mountain. It can be really frustrating at parts, but that's just kind of how the physics work.
Well, and you're still sliding, where after getting hit, so you may slide somewhere where you don't really.
Yeah, you can fly. Right? You can straight up slide off of the cliff,
right?
For example, which you might as well just reset if that happens. But yeah, so it's a racing game with a lot of like cutesy but decent snowboard mechanics. It feels really good. There's a lot of characters that have weight to them. There's some characters that are more like they do tricks instead of like speed. It's the same thing as Mario Kart, really. But the big point of Snowboard Kids is just to win the race. But also, while winning the race, you want to get enough money during the race to be able to buy new boards and unlock, whatever. I think there's like paint shop that you can unlock, but otherwise it's mainly just boards.
Right.
And once you get to the hard mode, you unlock the special boards. Those cost a shit ton of money.
Right.
So what you want to do is you want to do a lot of tricks while you're on the races. The tricks will score you a lot of points, which is basically points and currency are like the same thing in this game.
Well, and it's also needed during the race to use your attacks and stuff.
Oh, right. So like in Mario Kart, you can hit the blocks at any point and use whatever items come out of those blocks. In Snowboard Kids, you have to basically buy your items.
Yeah.
They only cost 100, which, I mean, like, if you're halfway decent at Snowboard Kids, like, you never run out of currency. If you're Dave, you're broke the entire time.
Yes.
So, yeah, you go down the mountain, you score a bunch of points, and you're just trying to win the race. Usually you got to do 3 laps on each mountain. So at the bottom...
there's a turnstile.
Yeah. So at the bottom, there's basically a ski lift.
Yeah.
And whoever gets to that first goes up the ski lift.
Right.
Now, there's like a few second like break period between when somebody goes on there and gets up the mountain and when it opens up again.
Yeah.
So there can be a giant pile of you and a bunch of NPCs like frantically fighting and throwing shit at each other to try to get onto the ski lift.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's frustrating, but a lot of times it's like hilarious.
You can kind of cut in line.
Yeah, you can definitely, if you show up a little late and you got some items to burn, you can definitely cut in line, or you can jump over people.
Yeah.
Hey, you can do a bunch of things, but yeah, there's a lot of cool power-ups. I mean, there's stuff you can shoot behind you, stuff you can shoot in front of you. A lot of items have like a kind of like homing mechanism to them, so if you shoot it kind of straight, it'll kind of lock on to the people in front of you. You can also deflect items if you're actually good at this game, which, again, Dave,
I'm not.
Not so much.
Yeah.
But if you jump and do a tail grab, right as you're getting hit with an item, you can deflect it backwards.
Right. Very
hard to time. You kind of look behind you to try to time it. I mean, it's not an easy mechanic. Yeah. But yeah, once you're good at this game, there's only 6 levels. It's fairly short. There's like 6 characters from the start, maybe 8, that all... I mean, like I said, it's the straight up Mario Kart Diddy Kong thing. Some of them are heavier than others, some are lighter than others, some are better at tricks, some are better at just winning the race.
I will say there's a little more of a cutscene story kind of thing going on between races.
Oh yeah. There's like a full-fledged story going on between each race in the story mode.
Yeah.
So if like you're into that kind of thing and want to sit and watch it, there's something going on there.
Yeah.
I think it's actually.
Aliens, right?
I can't remember if this follows the same kid that was in the first one that you're facing. I think it's Damien is his name, the little devil kid.
Yeah, little devil. Yeah, I look like an alien, I thought.
Yeah, I don't know what he is, a little goblin or something. Yeah. But yeah, so it just kind of follows him around. There's actually boss fights in this game that were not in the first one.
That was kind of neat, yeah.
Yeah, so again, that's very Diddy Kong Racing, which I think came out first. I could be wrong, but I think it did. Where you just have to basically shoot the hell out of a boss before the finish of the race. They're not that hard, but once you get to expert mode, they get insanely difficult.
Yeah, I think you have to avoid getting hit by the things they're shooting out and keep close enough to them that you can keep attacking them.
Yeah, the hard part is just even sometimes getting the items to be able to shoot at them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a nutshell, that's Snowboard Kids 2. Now, the big differences between this and Snowboard Kids 1, the major gripe I have about this game are the tricks.
Right.
So in Snowboard Kids 1, you could do a tail grab off of a jump, and you could hold it the entire time until just about when you're about to land, and you get, points for basically how long you held it.
Sure.
Now, in this game, you can't. You can do a tail grab, but it's just a quick grab, and they release it. So, yes, you can do 20 of them during a jump. It just doesn't feel as good. I don't know why. It doesn't matter.
Probably less realistic.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
I like to be able to hold my board, but really does that matter? No. Now, the other big thing they took out of this game was in the first game, everyone had their own special trick that they could perform by doing, like a Hadouken with the analog stick, for example.
Sure.
Now, that shit was kind of hard to pull off, especially for you, Dave.
Yeah.
But for some of the racers, it could be a very expensive trick to pull off. You get 400 points or whatever for them, whereas normally you could only get 100. So they completely gutted that out of the game.
Yeah.
Don't know why they didn't replace it with anything. Don't know.
Yeah. They just wanted to focus more on the racing or on the surroundings, the characters.
Yeah, everything else looks better, plays about the same.
I don't remember the first one having the little hub town.
No, the first one just had a screen.
Yeah, this one has a little hub town where you go into the board shop, you go into the painting shop, you go into the practice zone.
Yeah, the training facility, there's a little area where you can do tricks, there's no longer the half pipe that was in the first one. There's a trick arena, there's a deliver the papers section. That's actually kind of fun, but it's a little frustrating.
Yeah.
And while you do those, you can unlock other characters that you can play in multiplayer mode.
Right.
Which are pretty sweet, but again, I really wish you could play that stuff in the story mode. I don't know why they would limit it. I guess maybe it'd be too easy, but who cares?
I mean, they add boards that make the game completely easy too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, for relatively easy.
Yeah, once you complete the game on normal mode, it unlocks an expert mode. And then like basically for each race you unlock an expert mode, it unlocks a new board that you can buy.
Right.
And some of the boards are just outrageous. So there's like the standard trick board, which I think you get for just doing trick stuff or the trick mode. That's essentially a feather that like makes you jump to the moon and you can do 1,000 tricks. Hard as hell to win a race with it, but
yeah.
Then there's the star board, which is actually carried over from the first game. It's basically just the best board in the game.
Right.
And then there's some other things, like the dragon board, for example, where it always has a rocket attached to the back. Right. Even if you crash, it just spawns another rocket and you just keep going.
Yeah.
Which also means it kind of breaks the whole mechanics of the game. So your character will just go flying.
Yeah.
It is kind of like a good luck.
Yeah.
You'll get the hang of it eventually type of deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, that's Snowboard Kids 2. I would say it is better than the first game. They did take away the horrible rubber band mechanics of the NPCs that was in the first game. So now you can actually like win a race. Whereas in the first game, like there would always, no matter what, there would always be somebody right on your butt.
Yeah.
They took that out of this game, so it's a little bit easier, but it also gives you the hard mode. And, you know.
And it looks like the same developer as Rakjin, I believe, is the developer, and Atlas was the publisher. I don't think that changed from the first game.
I would doubt it. It plays almost identically, other than the random few things that got it out of it. But yeah, no, this one for me is like one of those solid like 4 to 4.5 style games where it's like you're either really good at it and you love it, or you're like Dave. For some reason, you and the Nintendo 64 just don't work.
Yeah, it's one of the systems I played the least, and I it might have something to do with that style of game too. I'm not incompetent at racing games in general, but the tricks in this game, every time it doesn't feel natural to me at all. The motion, and so I just need to sit down and play it a lot more to get competent.
Yeah,
hasn't happened.
Once you figure out how to do the tricks, it's the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
For some reason in my
brain, it just doesn't make sense.
And I've held the controller in front of you and showed you exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It just doesn't register. So
it doesn't work.
I don't even know if you want to give it a rating or just.
I think I could agree with you that it seems like a 4-star game. I really can't say anything about it that seems lacking really, other than a few of your complaints about things missing from the other game, or
I can give you some bad racing games to play.
Yeah. This doesn't seem like a bad game at all. I was slowly getting better at completing races. I just wasn't getting good at the tricks.
Yeah, which is kind of like, okay, you can beat the game, but you can never really improve.
Yeah, that's what you need to spend some time on if you aren't naturally good at it.
All right, well, why don't you take us on to our next one, Dave?
Yeah, so this is another game that I got, again, it was a present from my parents, from my mom, I think, picked it out, and this was Gradius on the NES, which was developed and published by Konami. It's a space horizontal shooter game. Came out in 86, in December, I believe. And
that is Christmas right up the alley.
Yeah, and I don't know if I don't think I got it. No, I don't believe I got my Nintendo until I'm trying to remember if it was 87 or 88 or whatever.
Sure, I didn't get mine until like 90.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what year, but this would have been out for a while when I got it. But it's a port of the arcade game, and you could say, looking through some of the other options, it's one of the better ports of Gradius. Yeah. The music and graphics and sound effects are all great. They're not quite to the level of Life Force, but really close. The sound is probably the weakest of the thing. The sound gets a little grating, like the laser is kind of droning, and it's
and eventually like the laser sound or the laser sound just like stops working.
Yeah, that was something they improved quite a bit, and I like the Gradius soundtrack, but like some of the sound effects kind of drown it out a little bit. And the music is good, but some of the sounds from Salamander, from Life Force, were much better. So there was some room to improve. But it was the first in a long series of shooters, unless you want to call it the sort of spiritual successor to Scramble, which Konami released before then, which was another arcade shooter.
I don't know if I really played that.
Yeah, Scramble wasn't anywhere near as popular. It doesn't really have a lot of similarity in gameplay. It's just kind of similar in some ways, but it didn't have power-ups in the same way this did. It didn't have bosses and things. It was just a much more of a basic shooter of the era of the early 80s. Whereas this started a whole new thing where you got the bar of power-ups at the bottom, you collect the red orbs, and you decide how many, any games before that had power-ups, it would be like a single power-up. Like Galaga, you get the extra ship and now you double your firepower. This was, I think, the first game I can think of where you can select what power-ups you want. There's multiple options. You can choose what order you want to get them in. Unfortunately, you lose them all when you die. So that's probably the biggest problem with the game is, it's not like exactly a bullet hell or anything, but it kind of
can be at points.
It can be at points, and it kind of feels like that where, if your number one goal is to avoid crashing into things, is to avoid the huge swarm of bullets. Later on, your number one goal becomes keeping a shield up and keeping enough red orbs to repower your shield as soon as you lose it, because sometimes you're just going through a swarm of things and you are going to lose that shield and you're going to immediately need a new one.
Yeah.
But fortunately, the game does toss you a bone at the beginning of each level. You get a series of easy enemies that drop power-ups when you kill all 4 of them, and you get typically like 5 or 6 of them, I think, at the beginning of every level.
Well, sometimes later on, those enemies actually start fighting back. That's what sucks.
They do start shooting at you, but they still have a pretty easy pattern. So at least you can get some power-ups at the beginning of the level. If you manage to just scrape through the previous level, you have nothing. You can at least get a laser. You can get some speed, maybe an option. So you're not complete garbage. It does still be, as I said, it still becomes brutally difficult when you die and have to try and claw your way back with a pea shooter.
That's always been my problem with Gradius.
Yes, and even with a turbo controller, it's still rough. I will say there's some neat codes. It doesn't have a multi-life code, like the 30 life code.
Right.
Although the PC Engine version does, I believe. But it does have a continue code. If you die, there's a code you can do. I believe it's up, down, BA, 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 BA 4 times. You have to do before the screen changes, and then you can continue. Again, you're starting over with nothing at that level, so that's going to be rough anyway.
I would rather start at the beginning of the level than at the end with jack shit.
I would usually want to restart from the beginning of the game. To me, Gradius was seeing how far I could get with all those power-ups.
Yeah.
There is also a separate power-up code that gives you missiles, shields, and 2 options. You have to press start and do the Konami code. This is one of the first uses of the Konami code. It gives you basically everything but a laser. But you can only do it once per game, except if you kill the big core enemy quick enough, and at the end of a level, it gives you an extra use of it. So normally you can only do that once per game, which is huge. Usually I'll die somewhere in level 4, 5, 6, somewhere. And being able to use that is like the difference between starting the game over effectively. Again, you can claw your way back, but that gets tough. There's a few other interesting things. There's a secret bonus if you collect a 7th orb. So you got the bar on where you would get the shield. If you collect a second orb, it carries you forward back to the first thing where you get the speed up.
Yeah.
But if your score is at 5 when you do that, you get points. If your score is at 0, the thousands digit. If the thousands digit is at 0, you get a rapid fire power up.
Oh.
Which I probably accidentally did that at some point and never noticed. I don't think it's. I'd have to try it to see, but I don't think it was so amazing. Like, I got to get this power up.
That sounds as random as getting like the gold ship in Mario 3.
Yeah, it's super duper random. And again, at that point in the game when you've got all your power ups and you've got your shield, you want to keep your bar on the shield thing. If you accidentally get, you are avoiding the orbs at that point, because if you accidentally get one, you could be screwed when you need to get a shield.
You're frantically trying to claw your way back to the shield.
Yes, exactly. So. Interesting, but not something I ever use. It also has a warp system. You can get from stage 1 to stage 3 if you destroy each of the 4 hatches in the level when your thousands digit of your score is even. Or from stage 2 to stage 3, if you destroy the big core there within 2 seconds of it turning blue. Or from stage 3 to stage 5, if you destroy 10 or more of the Moai statues.
Whatever.
I did occasionally do this back in the day. I had no idea how I did it. It just occasionally, I think it happened from killing enough of the Moai statues, because I used to go out of my way to do that. That was fun.
Well, it is fun, yes.
It is fun.
Yeah.
And what happens then is you go through this warp thing where there are these little green highlighted Moai statues that are, instead of enemies, that you have to dodge, and you're like going through hyperspace. It's really neat. I remember doing it once in a while back in the day, but I had no idea how. It's just neat.
That'd be like something you tell your friends, and they're like, "Yeah, whatever, dude.
You're full of it, dude." Yeah. I don't remember if it was ever a Nintendo Power. It might have been, but I think I just found it by accident. The game is generous with 1-ups, which is good. You can get them a lot from high score, and on the first, I think, 4 or 5 levels, there's a place where you can move your ship and get a 1-up. Usually a dangerous place.
But again, who cares? Like, once you die, like, the 1-ups don't even matter anymore. Yeah,
it's hard to use the 1-ups. It's hard to make good use of them. Once you've died once, you're going to die a lot.
Yeah.
Unless you're really ridiculously good at the game. Like, you just have to be good. You have to be bullet hell level good of just dodging everything, knowing what's going to come where, and just not being there. Because you're not going to quickly kill anything. And the game expects you to have 2 options, 2 lasers, you destroying everything,
with everything else.
The constantly shooting missiles everywhere. It expects you're killing things right away.
Right.
There's also a couple interesting things in some other versions. The MSX version has a new stage and some bonus stages. The PC Engine version has a new stage. The MSX version also, I think it has 2 carts on that computer. If you put the Gradius cart and the Twinbee cart in, you play Gradius as Twinbee.
That sounds cool.
I think there's actually a hack for the NES
cool.
that you can actually play it that way too.
Huh.
So there's some interesting fun stuff like that. But the big thing is all the power-ups. You have a speed power-up, which 1 is required. You almost can't play the game without 1 speed power-up.
You can't do anything without 1.
2 is pretty good for some things, but you can easily crash too easily if you have too much speed, and you can't slow back down. It's not
2 is like my sweet spot.
2 is probably better.
Yeah.
And it's I prefer games, I think was it Blazing Lasers or some other ones where you have a button that decreases your speed.
Yeah.
That would be much better, but it doesn't have that here yet. You have the missiles, which only shoot downward and kind of travel along the bottom of the screen. They're slow, but they do eventually kill the turrets for you down the bottom, which is nice. The double weapon, I think that was put in the game to troll you. Like, there's like 1 or 2 places. You shoot forward and upward, but you're shooting regular bullets.
Yeah.
So they're weak.
I don't think there's ever been, like, the only time I ever took those is when I was just like rage quitting and 1-upping or whatever, and it's just like, I don't know.
Generally, when I
that's all I can get.
Generally, when I click that, it's because I accidentally clicked it.
Yeah.
And now I need to get more orbs in order to get the laser. The laser is what you want. That shoots. It passes through enemies. It goes the length of the screen. It does a ton of damage. It's super strong.
Ridiculous.
You got to have the laser.
Yeah.
And then the option, you have these little globes that follow you, and they fire everything you fire. And the interesting thing is, in the arcade version, you can have 4 of them. In the NES version, you limited to 2 because of the sprite limitations on the NES.
Oh, okay.
Other versions of Gradius also have the 4, and there are hacks that for the NES that let you have 4 options.
Freeze the system.
Which is what it was supposed to be. The only reason, I think it requires using like an MMC4 chip or something like that, because otherwise it's not powerful enough to do it. But they're important for the extra firepower, but they're also important because you can place them places where you can't be because they're vulnerable. So you can put them right in the Moai head so it can kill it. Whereas if you got that close, it'd be shooting rings at you and it would kill you. So they're huge. That's the options are what makes Gradius to me. Like that was.
For sure. I mean,
it was the first big game to have that kind of thing, and you start seeing it in things like Ninja Gaiden and things like Ninja Spirit. You start seeing it in shooters all over the place. Yeah. And then the shields. The shield, in this game, it's the 2 little globes in front of you that it doesn't actually just block things in front. That's just the effect. It actually makes you invulnerable, but it takes like 3 hits or whatever, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
And in the arcade, it actually was a little swirling thing. Here, it doesn't actually rotate or move or anything, because again, the sprites weren't that good, but it does turn red when it's about ready to fade away, which is nice, because that warns you, you better have your orbs ready, because your next hit, you're going to lose it. And the problem is you don't have a lot of you don't have an invincibility frame really in this at all.
No.
So you can easily lose your shield and die if whatever you're hitting is still there after, like, if it's not just a single enemy that dies when it hits you. If you're like bumping against a wall or certain other things, you're going to die even with a shield.
That's just like a Gradius staple too. That's not even with the first one.
Yes.
Because I played a lot of Gradius 3. So the first one, I beat it, but I used a Game Genie.
Yeah.
Like, straight up, because, like, I didn't want to put the effort into, like, figuring out where everything was in this game.
I managed to beat it, and I remember now, I did beat it back in the day, but it's tough, especially without that code I mentioned.
So I played a lot of Gradius 3 on Super Nintendo, which has a lot of that slowdown.
Yes.
Because it has the 4 options.
Yes.
So, like, that screen crawls.
Yes.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But, yeah, with this one, I was just... restarting basically in the middle of levels constantly for 10 minutes at a time, trying to figure out how the hell you get past it with nothing.
I usually play this game sitting close to the reset screen or reset button and just play it get as far as you can, get to level 2, level 3, level 4, or whatever. Fail, reset, try again. It's learning the levels. It's learning, don't go up here now because one of the little guys on the top right of the screen is going to walk onto the screen and kill you.
I'll walk behind you.
Yeah, you have to know when you can safely be in certain parts of the screen and when you can't. You have to get good at. There's certain enemies you have to kill in certain levels that are really hard to kill, and you have to be able to get close and blast them before they respond.
Yep.
And you have to get good at utilizing the shield. You have to get good at, having the extra 6 orbs ready and being ready to use it at a split second when it expires. If it's red, you have to be able to take a single hit, put up your shield, and then get your orbs back. It's a whole thing. The levels, it's basically a 7-level game, which is not bad. I mean, it's relatively short once you get good at it, at least. But it's got the iconic cavern in space as level 1. It's the iconic Gradius level.
For sure.
A lot of games, I think, copied it. Just full of cannons and ships and stuff. I think levels 2 and 3 are more like just a cannon emplacement in space or asteroids or something with, again, lots of cannons. Level 3, they add the Moai heads. Just the huge stone heads that pop up and shoot little laser rings at you.
And that's a level that pops back up in 3 as well.
Yeah. And those are iconic. That's kind of you see little chibi Moai heads in other games, like Proteus and Twinbee and stuff. They're kind of a common thing that Konami throws in other games.
I don't know why, but
they people like them. They show up in a lot of Gradius games, especially. People always like blowing them up. They're.
So I'm pretty sure they're also in Life Force, aren't they?
I think so. Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. They use them all the time.
It's not like a whole level full of them, but I'm pretty sure they're in there at some point.
Yeah, this was a whole level full of them, which is one of my favorite levels. It's really fun. It's somewhat of a challenging level. One thing that I miss about level 2 and 3 in this game, in the arcade, there's vertical scrolling in those levels.
Oh.
Like you can move up and down and you have different paths. In this game, again, because of the limitations of the NES, they couldn't do it. There's a hack that adds it back in. I believe they added back in Gradius 2. I'd have to check. One of the hacks I think that makes it like the arcade, I think adds that back in somewhat. But level 3 has the Moai heads. Level 4 is literally level 1 flipped upside down.
Oh, I didn't know.
Kind of weak, but whatever.
Interesting.
Level 5 is entirely out of space. No borders or anything at all. You're just fighting these blobs with indestructible arms that shoot bullets out of their arms. And that's one of the first enemies you fight where it's really hard.
Those are annoying as hell.
If you don't have a laser, good luck. Just dodge them.
I didn't. No. Yeah.
If you don't have a laser, you pretty much have to lure them to one side of the screen and then fly around them.
Yep.
But if you have a laser, especially if you have an option, you get up close to them, get the option right up there, and then just blast them. Because the arms will block your lasers, so you can't always shoot straight. You gotta. That's
another kind of thing they brought back in Life Force. Like the end boss of the first level has those wavy arms that follow you around.
Yeah, so arms you gotta shoot around. Level 6 is more of an organic feeling stage, similar to Life Force, kind of a precursor, you could say. And it's got, the cell walls you can shoot through, the little amoebas.
Yep.
You have some choice of route, and there's power-ups and things. I don't remember if that one still had a 1-up, but That one, the sub boss is like the head of a creature that you've been flying through that just has 2 turrets that just shoot lasers continuously at you. It's actually pretty easy, especially if you have the laser.
Yeah.
It's a little more interesting because most of these levels, the boss is the big core ship, which is that
what
iconic.
I really didn't like about this game was like every single boss is this little core ship.
Yeah, the big core ship doesn't look quite as cool as the arcade. It's a little more shrunken, but it's just this ship with a core in the middle with like 4 little blast shields that you have to shoot through.
It doesn't really get that much harder.
No, it's exactly the same every time you fight it.
Yeah.
You have to dodge it in a certain pattern because it shoots 4 big missiles in front of you that if they hit you, good luck, you're dead.
Sure.
I think it blasts through your shields right away. But you have to keep shooting the little protection thing in front of the core, which if you have the laser, it's pretty easy. If you get really close, you can kill them really quick, but that's gutsy because you gotta, they're gonna blast you very quickly if you're not careful.
But with this one, it was really easy to lead the shot.
Yes.
Because I never played this with the laser because I was just getting my ass kicked.
Yeah.
But it's very easy just to lead the core boss.
Yeah, it's very easy not to get killed. It's harder to kill it. And so I appreciate the levels like level 6 where they give you something different. Level 7 then is the fully technological stage. You're in the Bacterian Empire headquarters, and there's a little more variety of dangers. It's more enclosed. It's more like that at the end of Life Force where you're trying to race out of the thing in a hurry. Except in here, instead of like columns that close and shut, it's just tight corridors that you have to fly through. But at the very end, there's one single wall that slowly closes that you have to know.
I screwed that up.
You have to know when you see it that you have to rush ahead and race through it.
I was so pissed. I'm like, okay, a boss is going to spawn here, right?
Right.
Yeah. What the?
If you wait, you cannot get through it. You're dead. You lose that life. There's no way to shoot it down. There's no way to get through it. Once you do get through it, the easiest boss ever. I think you literally don't even have to shoot it. I think you can just wait and it dies.
I was so confused. I didn't know what the hell was happening.
Yeah, because it's a brain with these 6 energy beams coming out of it, holding it in place. At first, I thought you had to shoot the place where it joins the wall. Nope. First, I thought you had to shoot the brain enough times till it dies. Apparently, no. Apparently, you can just wait and it dies.
That's what I did.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Because I didn't understand what was happening. Like, I think I was shooting it, nothing was happening. So it's just like, okay.
Yeah, so, and it's confusing because as soon as the timer or whatever it is expires, it literally goes to the end screen where it shows your ship flying away and it shows the thing blowing up behind you and all that. And it's confusing. It just blinks off like you think you screwed up or something.
I absolutely did not. I'm like, dude, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what they were trying to do with that, but swing and a miss.
Yeah, so it's, that's kind of some of the things where it sort of failed. And I think most of these things existed in the arcade, although the arcade, like I said, it had 4 options. It had, level 1 was more involved. There was more turrets and things. There was, the NES game, even with the limitations, it still lags in places. There are places where it's very laggy. But there are hacks, like I said, that improve this. There's one particular hack that I really like is called, so there's one called AC 2000 that just looks and sounds more like the arcade. There's Arrangement Chronicle Death, which is the one that uses the MMC5 mapper. Which I don't know if it I don't recall if it actually works on a core NES or standard NES, or if you have to play it on an emulator or like a Mister or a Analog Pocket or something like that. But it uses the mapper so you can have 4 options. So that it looks and sounds more like the arcade. I think it has the it might have the vertical scrolling in level 2 and level 3. It has a lot of improvements. I have to refresh my memory which ones, but you have one called Resurrection that lets you continue on death like Life Force.
Oh my god, that would be so much better.
And then there's also one called for Gradius 2, which we could talk about if you want, also called Arrangement Chronicle Death, which does the same thing. And that's why I wanted to lead into, there's a Gradius 2 that we never got that came out in Japan 2 years later.
Let's rank Gradius 1 first.
Okay, we can do that.
Excuse me.
So I would give it, honestly, I would still give it a 4 out of 5.
But
I could see giving it a 3.5. I mean, I guess I give it a lot of credit because of what it led to. Maybe it's more fair as a 3.5, but
hey, it's legit. It's your rating.
That's what
That's fine.
Because it's so playable to me. I mean, even it's hard. It's way too hard, but it's still consistently playable. You know what you're getting into. It doesn't. it doesn't have like the huge slowdowns for the most part that some other Gradius games have. It's technically very competent and it's fun, I think.
So
frustrating, but fun.
Very frustrating.
Yes.
So I didn't play Gradius until I was older, and I grew up with Life Force.
Yeah.
I owned a Life Force.
Yeah.
That was my game.
Yes.
So for me, it's a major step back.
It is.
I mean, it obviously is.
I mean, I
you can barely even argue it, but
I consider Life Force a 5-star game.
Yeah, Life Force is fantastic.
So I consider this a 4-star. This is a full step down from Life Force.
Yeah, and Life Force has doesn't it have same time multiplayer as well? Like
yes.
Same screen?
Yes.
Yeah, which
Life Force is
a 5-star, perfect, whatever.
It's great. Yes.
But yeah, so like Gradius for me, it's so hard going back and being like, okay, not only do you have to restart at a horrible checkpoint if you die,
yep.
you might as well just reset the game every single time. There's no point.
Yep.
But yeah, on top of that, sure, you got the same power ups, so that's all fine if you can manage to actually get to the point where you're using them.
Yep.
But yeah, just the checkpoints themselves and the boss fights are just so lame.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing where if you go to Life Force, the bosses are like, they look awesome.
Yeah.
And for the most part, like, they don't do a whole lot, but at least they look awesome.
Yeah. And they have interesting, they have slightly different gameplay mechanics and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like the hardest thing in the world, but like,
yeah.
I just find Life Force was a more complete, approachable game. So it's hard for me to go back like 5 steps.
Yeah.
And play the original Gradius. So like, I would still give it like somewhere between a 2.5 to 3.
Ooh.
Now, okay. Bear with me. The 2.5 is if I'm grading it right now compared to like Life Force, because it is a very stripped down version of it.
It is.
I would give it a 3 just because, hey, at the time it came out, probably pretty good. Now,
yes,
it's just frustrating as hell, and I utterly hate the little like mini game portion of it where it's like there's a volcano going off, and you have to somehow know like where the hell to stand.
The sub bosses. Yes.
Besides horrible trial and error or having all the power-ups available to you, the hell?
Yeah,
what are you supposed to do?
2 stages that have the volcano, 1 stage where enemies just pop up all over the screen and you have to dodge them. And and again, if you don't have a shield or better lasers, you just better be really good at not accidentally hitting one when it pops up.
Well, like the volcano, you can't do shit. You just park in a place and you like hope that you're not going to get hit, but there's always like one random rock that just comes and smashes you like towards the very end.
It kind of expects you to have fully powered up weapons. The game kind of expects you to get through without dying.
And if it was Life Force where you could die there and just continue on, whatever.
Yeah, and
I wouldn't be so pissed.
It's kind of almost like Contra. Like Contra doesn't really expect you to play through with the Konami code. It kind of expects you to get through without...
Sure, but if you die in Contra, you just respawn.
Fair enough.
Sure, you could die 3 times in succession, but like that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So that's what's hard for me. I'll give this a 3, like I'm throwing you a bone type of 3. But if I were to compare this to like exactly when it came out without Life Force existing, I'd probably rate it higher.
Yeah, I mean, considering what else was out in 86... this is amazing.
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of bad shooters on the NES. They're just painfully average shooters.
Yeah, so like, that's what's hard for me. So,
I even prefer this to something like Twin Bee, which would be somewhat comparable.
I haven't played much of Twin Bee at all.
But this is more interesting game to me. But,
Whereas like this, like Sky Kid, for example, is like a super shallow, kind of fun, cutesy shooter.
And I would prefer this to something like Sky Kid.
Well, I think I would too.
Yeah.
Sky Kid, I don't know if you're ever expected to actually beat that game.
Yeah, it's more... Sky Kid is more like a traditional old-school arcade game, where it's just like, just play it for a little... Whereas this is kind of where it starts to transition to more of an involved game, where there's an ending and there's, So
it's like almost a story-driven shooter, but like you don't really know the story unless you read the manual type of deal. But.
On the NES, you had games like Mario Brothers and Zelda that started the whole genre of games of that type. Gradius is kind of like that for shooters, where everything before it was kind of just a single-screen shooter, or very at best something like Galaga, and then this was like a whole different thing.
Oh yeah, it started the new genre. It was just. Everything that was released after Gradius is pretty much better than Gradius.
I don't know if I go that far, but...
at least some of them. Like, I don't even want to count Gundam, because that's more of a top-down. So is Dragon Spirit, but...
Yeah, I mean, this isn't... I'd probably rather play I don't know. This might be pretty close to Dragon Spirit for me, but I guess I'm nostalgic for this game. I owned it as a kid, so this was what Rampart was one I was disappointed with. This one I wasn't disappointed with, but I was frustrated. This is a game I had to keep playing and playing and playing until I could finally beat the silly stupid
This
thing.
is pretty much an NES hard game until you know where things are going to spawn out of.
Yeah, but the thing was, then they came out with Gradius 2 only in Japan 2 years later, which has a lot of the improvements, things that you expect from this SNES game, things you expect from Life Force. It has multiple sets of power-ups to select from, like in Gradius 3. It has 30 lives from the Konami code. It has improved graphics and sound. It has just way better everything. It has vertical scrolling. Like there's a level where you're going through these huge suns that have dragons coming out of them that look like level 3 in
Life Force.
In Life Force, and just amazingly better game. So try that out sometime and see, that was what I wish Gradius 1 was. I'm sad they didn't bring it over. I would have loved Gradius 2.
Have you played much of Gradius 3 at all?
A bit. I haven't gotten anywhere very far in it. And I need to play probably the hacked version without the horrendous slowdown.
Honestly though, the slowdown probably actually helps.
I get it, but it just feels terrible.
It does feel bad. That game for me is like a very frustrating experience because I've gotten to basically the second to last boss constantly.
Yeah.
And it's like a weird spider boss that you have to like crawl between its legs and just kind of stay there.
Yeah.
I always die.
Yeah.
And it's after like some of the hardest levels you'll ever play.
Right.
So
I will also say try the PC Engine version. That's probably the one version that's demonstrably better home port of it than the NES version.
Sure.
And it's pretty fun too.
Cool. And then the last thing I want to do is my honorable mention. Let's see if I get the title of this right. I think it was WCW NWO Revenge. Now there's so many wrestling games for Nintendo 64 that I'm pretty sure that's the one. That was the one after World Tour. It's essentially the exact same core gameplay that they've had for like a 5-game stretch in that series. But yeah, that one was, they massively expanded the roster from World Tour. They added on a bunch of different costumes. The graphics looks better. The gameplay was like much more improved. They added on a lot more taunts. They added on a lot more like weight of characters, a lot more customization.
Sure. Not
really created wrestler mode yet. That came like the next game or two afterwards, but so I just wanted to throw it out there because that was one where it's a big jump in quality. And if you like the WCW roster, it's essentially the same as WWF WrestleMania 2000. It's almost the exact same game with like less of the cool features, but the same core stuff. If you want to play like Raven, for example, DDP, some stuff like that, Sting, you got to play the WCW version. So I would recommend it. I also got it for Christmas. That's the only reason I bring it up. Yeah. So, yeah. I know it's months late, but we wanted to get that out there, and I'll release this on next Christmas. So.
Right. Well, with any luck, you get better things for Christmas than I did once or twice, but it's been better since then for the most part.
Yeah, I got a lot of sweatpants. I don't know about you, but yeah.